Good morning and welcome to Practical Christian Lessons. If you didn't watch our announcements in yesterday's video, I recommend going checking them out this upcoming Saturday. We are going to be doing a live stream. I remembered I'd already picked out yesterday's announcement is incorrect. I do know what I'm talking about. I just forgot I knew what I was talking about. This Saturday on the live stream and how their format's going to be is I'll have a subject to talk about, and then it'll be open to Q&A for whoever is there. This Saturday, it'll probably start around 8 to 9, and then go to 10 to 11. I just got some stuff I'm going to have to do. I'll have to figure out my exact schedule, but it's going to start around 8 to 9. There will be a community post with the exact time as soon as I know it. But it will be on guilt and shame. It's going to be a good one. And we are going over Wisdom of Sirach 33 today. First, I'm going to get a drink. I got a little... I'm not sponsored, Zero Sugar Dr. Pepper, but I could be. Wisdom of Sirach 33. Evil will not befall the man who fears the Lord, but in trial he will deliver him again and again. A wise man will not hate the law, but he who pretends to keep it is like a ship in a storm. A man of understanding will trust in the law, and to him the law is trustworthy, because it is a divine revelation. Prepare what to say, and thus you will be heard. Draw on your training and make your reply. The heart of a fool resembles a wagon wheel, and his reasoning is like a turning axle. A lusty stallion is like a mocking friend. He impregnates everyone who sits under him. Why is one day better than another, when all the lights of a day in the year is from the sun? They were separated by the knowledge of the Lord, and he changed the seasons and feast. Some days he exalted and sanctified, and some days he made ordinary. All men are from the ground, for Adam was created from the earth. In the fullness of knowledge, the Lord separated them and changed their paths. Some days he blessed and exalted, and some days he sanctified and drew near to himself. Some days he is cursed and humbled and removed from their place. All his ways are according to his good pleasure, like clay in a potter's hand. Thus men are in the hand of him who made them, to render them according to his judgment. Good is the opposite of evil, and life is the opposite of death. In the same way, a sinner is the opposite of a godly man. Look, therefore, upon all the works of the Most High. They also come in pairs, one the opposite of the other. I kept the last watch, like one gleaning after the harvest. By the blessing of the Lord I arrived in time, and like a grape picker I filled my winepress. Observe well that I did not labor for myself alone, but for all who seek instruction. Careful leadership. That's the next heading. Hear me, your leaders of the people, and you rulers of the assembly, listen to me. Do not give authority over yourself while you are still living, to your son or your wife, nor to your brother or a friend. And do not give your property to another, lest you change your mind and need to beg for it. While you are still alive, there is a breath in you. Do not change places with anyone, for it is better that your children should ask from you than that you should look to the hands of your sons. Be outstanding in all your works. Do not put a blemish on your reputation. On the day when the days of your life are fulfilled, at the time of your death, distribute the inheritance. Fodder, the rod, and a burden are for a donkey, and bread, instruction, and work are for a servant. Make a servant work, and you will find rest. Leave his hands idle, and he will seek freedom. Yoke and strap will bend the neck, and racks and tortures are for an evil servant. Put him to work that he may not be idle, for idleness teaches much evil. Set him to the work appropriate for him, and if he is not obedient, put heavy chains on his feet. And do not act superior toward any flesh, and do nothing without judgment. If you own a servant, let him be as yourself, for with your blood you bought him. If you own a servant, treat him as a brother, for you will need him as your own soul. If you treat him badly and he runs away, which way will you go to look for him? That is Wisdom of Sirach 33. And man, there's a lot of wisdom in there. I just want to touch on, though I'm not going to focus on it for this, and this is what we do here when we're reading through the Apocrypha. We're not treating it as scripture because it's not scripture. We are treating it as beautiful, edifying text for the soul that the church has recognized as as text that is good to read for your benefit, even though it is not the same level as Scripture. And the reflecting on creation is something I would just really love to do. Okay, we are going to make this a focus video. And that is something that has given me a lot of ways in which to see the light of Scripture. And this is something we really need to do in a lot of church. And that is, our theology must live up to reality. It can't just be this abstract sort of sitting in an armchair, the armchair theologian, if you will, thinking about it and figuring it out, but then never seeing how it works in the real world. You'll hear tons of arguments around the infallibility of the church in certain circles. And if that's something that's true, it has to be true to reality. And it's not. You see contradictions within arguments from various church fathers on certain things, councils that contradict each other throughout church history, etc., etc., and innovations and developments. If it's infallible and is the faith of the apostles, then as it went through the ages, then no one would have changed it. And we see changes in the church. And that's one of the things we kind of have to constantly fight for is reformation and returning to and staying true to our roots. Is a constant struggle from Israel wandering in the wilderness when they first received the Lord's command, to Israel in exile, to Israel being exiled again, and on. We have continued the trend, unfortunately. But reflecting on creation is ways to look at the theology you have and see if it's true to what's actually happening in reality. And then also it gives a lot of light to the way Scripture talks. I'd have a 40-mile drive to and from work, right, for now anyway. And I get a lot of time to just look at nature. Sometimes it's dark in the morning. Sometimes it's a cloudy day on the way home. Sometimes it's bright and sunny. And there have been a lot of times I look at nature and think, is this how the people of our past would have understood it, right? They were an agricultural people. They would have been out in the weather. They would have seen it all the time. Or, if you're traveling in the desert, you're used to traveling in a desert, stuff like that. And when I see the sun is out but covered by clouds, where if the sun wasn't behind the clouds, it would just be darkness. Is that what it's like for the darkness to be as light to the Lord, and as to the people, right? Even though the darkness is attempting to cover up the light, it still shines through the clouds and reflects from the clouds. And you can still tell the sun is there, even though the darkness is trying to cover up that light. Things like that. And I wish I had remembered it from my journal article. But another thing I sort of thought on a similar vein is I just saw gnats around a tree and thought about the ways that the Scripture talks about, is that sort of the same thing, the darkness attempting to cover up light. Because if you've seen a big old group of gnats, they're buzzing everywhere. And just the fool is like a group of insects buzzing incessantly, things like that throughout the Scriptures. And just take time, right? Sit by a pond or a lake, just listen to the water, take a walk in the woods, just go through that, experience that. And then next time you read Scripture and it has these experiences, reflect on that and be like, okay, this is a way I can see, I can hear, I can feel, I can experience what the Scripture is talking about. And especially if you live in a town or a city where you don't necessarily get that, it can be really enlightening to just go out and experience what God has made. And will give you a new appreciation for the creation. The church historically has been one of the biggest motivators for progression in science because of the contemplation of the beauty of God's creation. And I think that's something we always need to remember and keep striving for. And there are plenty of people that do, but there's also plenty of people who say that that's not what we've done, despite the fact historically that is actually the case. And that is something worth continuing to do. With that, you guys have a wonderful day and God bless.